Now, we've been talking today about the anti-racism protests, which of course began in the United States after the death of George Floyd, but have since spread around the world. And yesterday evening, there were some violent scenes in London as protesters and police clashed, although it is really important to say that the vast majority of the demonstrations were peaceful. We're now joined by the former footballer and the anti-racism campaigner, John Barnes. Thank you very much for being on the programme. Do you think the UK has a racism problem like the US?
Well, it hasn't got a problem like the US in terms of black policemen killing black people on the street, as we saw with the George Floyd fiasco. However, in terms of the disenfranchisement of the inner cities, of the black community not being given access to healthcare, social care, jobs, housing, it's exactly the same. But of course, what we are witnessing in the US, which has outraged people, is the visible face of racism. And the visible face of racism in terms of footballers being abused, the George Floyd situation, and you know, the police, it's an obvious and easy thing to be outraged about. We should be equally as outraged the fact that our young black kids in the inner cities aren't being given an education, they're not being given housing, and job promotion possibilities. So it isn't like the US in terms of the violence that we may see, but in terms of how impactful it is negatively on the black community, it's exactly the same.
You've often spoken about the need to speak up for what you describe as the voiceless and to, really focus, I guess, on racism that's experienced by underprivileged black communities. Do you think that there's been enough of a focus on that when it comes to the debate on whether the UK is racist?
No, there isn't, because it's about as I said, the visible face of racism, the footballers and the black actors and black singers who may not get Oscars or may not get, Emmys. And of course, from the police perspective, in terms of people being stopped and being arrested. But for 90%, more than 90% of the black community, they may not come up against that. However, what they do come up against is the fact that their children aren't being given education, they're not being given housing, and access to social care, and how big the problem is. So that's why I would like the people with the platforms. My platform isn't that great anymore. I'm not a footballer anymore, but I have a small platform. And I will use my platform to say how terrible it is for John Barnes because he can't get a job as a football manager, as much as I do know that is an issue as well. I'd use my platform to talk about how terrible it is for the people less fortunate than myself, because until we sort that problem out down there, these racist incidents would always happen. That is racism. What we see with the George Floyd on football managers are racist incidents which happen, and then they go away, then they happen, and they go away, then they happen. So until we tackle the real problem of racism, to get rid of racism, racist incidents would always happen.
When you're talking about the problem of racism, the kind of structural inequalities on education, on housing, do you think it matters that there aren't any black people around the cabinet table in government?
Well, if you once again, if you want to see the visible face of racial equality, if that's what you want to call it, yes, we can put somebody in there. Will that make anything better? America had a black president for many years. Is it getting better there? So yes, that would be nice to then show black people that yes, there are black people who can get on, but for the majority of them, that won't make a difference at all. That's like saying we have a black manager, which we did have. Paul Ince was a black manager in the Premier League, 15 years ago. Ruud Gullit was a black manager. Have things changed? So the fact that we may then promote black people into positions of power doesn't change anything at all. We have to change people's perceptions.
But I guess you could argue that having black people in those positions of power means that they understand the racism that many underprivileged people experience more, and then they can do something about it.
Yes, but if you are involved in a systemic structure of discrimination and you become a part of that, how do you actually change that? You can't change that by yourself. Obama couldn't change it by himself. The black football manager who won the Champions League, Ruud Gullit being a successful black manager, he couldn't change that because it is systemic. So it's okay saying that, yes, they can go in there and change things. It's very difficult to change things from within.
You, this week, Lee Francis said he was deeply sorry for his portrayal of black people on Beau Selector, and you said that actually you'd quite like him to keep doing his impersonations of Craig David and Michael Jackson because you enjoy them. Do you understand why people were offended by them?
I can understand why people were offended by them in terms if they felt that they were a negative representation of black people, but they weren't. They're a negative representation of Craig David and is it a negative representation of Michael Jackson to dance and sing and do what he did? And as much as Craig David may have suffered, that is an individual thing. That is not a negative representation of black people. He was being particular about those particular people. He did Elton John. Are gay people going to be upset because he did a gay man? If he did a generic black man, like what blackface is, the black and white minstrels, and just saying, here's a black man talking rubbish, then I could understand that. But if you're doing a specific person, because as I mentioned, the gay community should be up in arms, because he also did negative representations or making fun of Elton John.
Do you think this, I guess, feeds into your argument that sometimes we're looking too much at the symbols rather than the racism that's experienced by so many millions of black people in inner cities and elsewhere?
Well, first of all, we have to analyse what we consider to be racist and not. And there's lots that is racist, and there's some that isn't. But unfortunately, you have two sides of it's not a binary situation. You've got two sides of the argument whereby people say everything is racist and some people say nothing's racist. And I'm having a big problem and lots of criticism, because I'm being criticised by so many white people who are saying I'm saying everything is racist, and then I'm criticised by a lot of black people who are saying to me, you're saying nothing's racist. That's why you have to take each and every argument, discussion, debate on its own merits.
It does feel like at the minute there's some kind of soul-searching going on among all people, I guess, in the country, but white people like myself as well, on how we can all try and work together to make things better. What would your advice be on the steps that we can take to try and make society less racist?
Don't just look at the visible signs of racism, like the George Floyd and the Derek Chauvin and the Amy Cooper. And when you actually see it, be outraged and be offended and really say we're going to do something about it, because that happens intermittently. What continues throughout every single day of black people's lives in inner cities is the systemic racism that affects their daily lives every day. And that's more important for us to challenge that than these incidents. Because until we challenge that, to break that down, deconstruct what we have wrongly learned about each other, I say racism is understandable, because what we have wrongly been told about different groups of people, be they black people, be they women, be they gays, we have been wrongly told for hundreds of years, negative, subliminal conditioning about those people. So therefore, it is in so many of us, but we don't admit it, we don't own it, we don't acknowledge it, but we wait to see the visible face of either homophobia or sexism, like Harvey Weinstein, or what happens with George Floyd, and then we're outraged, and then when we don't see it, we don't think about it. This is a continual effort to deconstruct racism, not to stop individual racist incidents.
You're right that it's something that we should always think about all the time, clearly. Now, you have experienced racism in your career yourself. There's that kind of iconic picture, I guess, of you backheeling away a banana at the Merseyside derby in 1988. Do you ever get young black players asking you for advice today?
Well, first of all, it's hard for me to give people advice because we're all individuals. And when people say, this is how black people should think, this is what we should do, I can't advise a black player. He has to do what's right for him. The way I reacted may be the different way Ian Wright reacts. However, I will say this. I didn't experience racism. I experienced lots of racist incidents, because that racist incident that I went through when a banana came on the field on a Saturday, on the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, John Barnes, the footballer, famous, lives in a nice house, drives a nice car, people are letting me into restaurants, into bars, into shops, didn't experience racism whatsoever. Then on a Saturday, a banana came on the field. Black people every single day in the inner cities experience racism every single day. And that's what we have to dismantle. Yes, we have to stop the racist incidents, the George Floyd, the bananas coming on. But until we look at it the other way and say, let us get rid of racism in society, they will always have racist incidents. And I understood that. So when I was being racially abused, I looked into the stand and I saw black football fans and who no one's speaking for them. The whole problem was John Barnes is being racially abused. What about black football fans who had to get to the game 5 minutes after the game started and leave 5 minutes before, and when they're walking down the street? But no one speaks for them. We always speak for the John Barneses of this world and the black elite, if you like. And that's why I think as a so-called celebrity elite person, leader of the black community, we should be speaking for them. And that's what I do. So I know we need to get more black managers and black actors getting Oscars and stuff like that. But I will always speak for the community first.
Thank you. It's really fascinating to talk and to talk about how you want to use your platform to try and change these perceptions. Just while we've got you, I have to ask, do you think it's right that the Premier League's returning?
It is right that the Premier League is returning. And in the way that it's returning, in terms of it being as safe as is possible, in terms of the structure that's put in place to try and obviously stop people getting coronavirus, and the fact that it's going to be behind closed doors. So I think they can manage that situation. So, yeah, I think it's returning. But I was listening to the gentleman before talking about when should it return? Should it be on the 17th? Should it be later? Some people have an opinion that it should be later. Some people say it should be earlier. We really don't know. It's a testing time. But I think, they will be able to manage that situation. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for coming on the programme this morning. Much appreciated. John Barnes there.